I am here today, as you would expect, with Anne Laure Jackson from Sante in Jersey. Hello, Anne.
Hello, lovely to see you.
Now, we were talking about your centre, and I think we sort of referenced it a bit. But can you give us a few more details? Because you deal with sensory health. So just for people who perhaps haven't listened to the last however many episodes, just help us with what it is that you do as a sensory specialist sensory occupational therapist. What is it you do? How can you help people? But also, where does the centre fit into what it is that you do?
Yeah, so as a sensory specialist, I help people, I equip others online through the stuff that I have to assess the sensory needs of an individual, whether that be the child, an adult, an older person. And then once we found the 7, 8 senses, we break down what's going on in each of those senses because they're foundational. It's how we come out of the womb. They're the foundation blocks on which we put all our development onto, to be coordinated, to speak well, to be emotionally regulated. And there are so many of our senses, so many ways that our senses process things that get in the way of having a fulfilled life and living well and feeling well. So we assess all of those senses, then I treat them through sensory integration treatment, ideally. Some of it is what I do myself. Some of it is what I teach people the principles of that therapy because it's really powerful. And then once the therapy's been done, or while the nervous system is changing, while we're changing the neurophysiology and their function physically, then we put management techniques in place, which is the kind of normal advice that if someone's bothered by sounds, they put ear defenders on or earplugs. Those are the management techniques. Those are sensory strategies, not sensory treatment. So that is where the centre comes into it. The centre is the space for that therapy to happen because there's lots of equipment in there that is very different to what you will see elsewhere. Although society is changing and we're getting more radical types, swings and things in the outdoor play areas, which is great, we don't have a lot of things like that indoors. So we need to challenge the body in a way that is exciting and that's motivating for people, which takes an element of risk. And that's why you want people to be able to oversee what goes on in that space, because it's that balance of allowing people the freedom and the free space to do things, but also allowing them that element of doing something different that they've never done before, which is what really develops the brain and the body really, really well.
I'm saying about the difference between sort of management and treatment, because if you're thinking about sort of the classic stereotype of you go to your doctor, your family practitioner, your GP. Okay, I've got a funny lump on my arm. It's a bit uncomfortable, and they'll take a look at it and they'll say, well, that's a bruise because it's the right color, or that could be something we need to get further investigation into, or what's going on here, and they can start to evaluate it and then to diagnose the problem, and then it might be okay. We need to cut something off the skin. We might need to give you some cream, or here's an ice pack. So that depending on what they see, they're going to be giving us some form of treatment. So where does treatment come in then, as opposed to management? Because management could be stop walking into walls, and there's a wall in your house and there's a bit sticking out, you keep banging into it. Well, move it out the way and you won't bang your arm, you won't have the bruise on your arm, which then, yes, will get worse and worse. So how do we kind of understand and balance between management of a situation as opposed to treatment of a situation?
Yeah. So if there was somebody that was banging into a wall, that's a really good, a lot of my people do that, literally. So it would be, and as you say, so management is move the wall. That is what the regular people, they see something happening externally, common sense tells you, let's move the wall, apart from the fact that it's expensive and all the rest of it. But the theory of it is, let's change the environment. That is what a lot of the advice is coming from, a lot of the spaces and places and support groups that are out there, because they're just common sense. And you help people think through the implications of what happens if you bump into a wall. The treatment side of it is, why are they bumping into that wall in the first place? What is going on with their visual perceptual, their tactile system, their proprioceptive system, which is their muscles and joints? How aware are they of where their body is? And therefore, that's why they're bumping into the wall. So I work on the body, I work on those senses. I would look at visual, I would look at auditory as well to see what they're picking up, how much they're aware of where they are in space, coming from what's coming in their ears. but in their tactile system, I'd assess that, and I'd assess their use of their muscles and their joints and their ability to know where they are, especially when we close their eyes. Give them some assessments of what it's like to do things with their eyes closed and just see how they function. So that way, I would do the actual sensory integration treatment to get the body working together, so we don't need to move the wall. Often some of the strategies are really cheap and really easy, but some of them, like moving a wall, would be really costly. So it's like, well, just give me 6 to 12 weeks with someone, let me work with them, let them work on their own body, and it can be remarkable the difference that it can make in someone's function, because we actually deal with and treat those senses, help them develop the way that they ought to have developed in order to help us function best as young people and as adults.
I guess partly because we think about moving a wall, that's builders, that's extensions, that's very expensive. But actually, do you know, it might be the cheaper option. If you keep on banging it and falling over and breaking your leg, do you know what? Moving a wall might be cheaper. And actually, I suppose in a sense, that's where looking at another option, rather than just banging into the wall, falling over and hurting yourself. It could be something sticking out of the wall. It could be a little, I don't know, little bit of, I don't know, a bit of wood or something. It's like, well, take it off the wall. Okay, it might look a bit messy at first, but your arm won't be bruised all the time, and actually that would be an improvement.
Yeah, we could also use other strategies. Well, does it look like, do we not have that highlight? Do we need to color it for the visual sense? So maybe we would need to put like a red marker on the side. It's like people walking into glass doors. It's just like, do we not recognize that actually people can't see that that's a door? That's really painful. Anybody who's walked into a glass door knows. So we've realized we need to put visual strips, some opaque things. And if people are still banging into walls, we need to change the color and make it really obvious that this is a pane of glass. Please do not walk into me. So we can use different strategies, or if they walk closer to something, then there's a little pad and there's a noise that goes off to say, okay, you're coming near the bit where the wall is. We could use all those other different sensory strategies to help stop someone bumping into the wall.
I used to work for a retail shop many years ago, and we had a full height glass door. It had like a metal surround. It wasn't perfectly glass, but we would frequently, at least twice a week, which to me was very frequent, someone would just march straight into the door, bounce off it and fall on the floor. Now, because it's not just glass, it was very strong. It was double glazed, so they're not going to break it unless they really run at it. And so we would put a little poster, smack in the sort of, eye height-ish big poster. And we were told off, oh, you can't do that. That's ruining the image of the shop. It looks ugly. And we would say, we kind of don't care, because a slightly ugly door is better. I mean, not even than the lawsuit. It's better than someone being hurt unnecessarily. Just stick a poster on the window. Problem solved.
It's so hard when you think aesthetically. I totally get it. Aesthetically, it looks gorgeous. I'm a big glass girl. I love glass all over the place, but not in a space where someone's going to walk into it. I don't know why we don't compute that, because it's all over the place. I'm so glad you did. Well done, you.
Well, it was just one of those. Everyone says, "Oh, it's the lawsuit." I said, I'm not. If it's a lawsuit, it's not me personally anyway. I don't really care. Actually, I'm more interested in the fact that somebody's walking into a door. I mean, aside from any pride and whatever, and my pride's been hurt, they could seriously injure themselves. And what if the glass does smash? Now, it's just the ramifications and the consequences of not sticking a poster at eye level, which ruins the aesthetics of the door, but actually protects people from serious harm.
And mentally, because if you've done that, all of a sudden you really doubt who you are and how you are, because you can't trust. A lot of my people can't trust their bodies. They're very cautious. They're very anxious. They're quite scared of a lot of things, because for a good reason, they can't trust their own body. That's a real trust issue, that all of a sudden you could see clearly, you're normally functioning really well, and you've had this massive trauma. You bump into something that you're not aware of. If people are on their phones, there's a reason why they bump into a lamppost, because they're on the phones. That's different. They're just being silly. It's just being distracted, and that's what happens. But when genuinely you believe that you are doing the right thing and you are walking well, and you just go into this door because there's nothing visually to give you that feedback that actually you're not physically going to be able to walk through this, you're going to get hurt in the process. That's a real shock to your mental health. A lot of doubt, a lot of insecurity. It can take a long time for some people to get over that.
Which is why we stuck a poster. And we got told off. It was taken down. We stick it back up again. Because you know what? Tough. Okay, let's look at that idea, because we were also talking about being risk averse. One of the things that always struck me growing up is we have a venture playgrounds or adventure parks, big massive theme parks, and they're spread over many, many acres, and you get strapped into this thing and it goes up a slope and it falls down the other side, and yeah, isn't it really, really fun? Now, personally, no, because I'm probably going to throw up because my stomach does not like that, but that to one side. It's amazing how safe we are, and we're shocked when it goes wrong. Someone's hanging up in the air and all of a sudden the machine breaks and they fall out. Well, yes, you're 200 foot suspended up, and the thrill is you might fall out. And you know what? Metal breaks. And it doesn't matter how much care they put in it. Some point it's going to break to the point you're going to fall out. That's going to happen. And sadly, tragically does. But how do we, I suppose, being risk-averse as a society, everywhere is getting slower. I was driving through a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit the other day thinking, this is too slow. I am not looking at anybody other than my speedo. And I really had to work really, really hard. As a professionally trained driver, I'm now not looking at any pedestrians or anything because I'm just trying to keep slow enough under that 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is why I think, that's not actually a wise way of going. But we sort of try and limit risk to the extent, if we're not careful, that we're actually not living. And at some point we have to live. So this is the example I was going to give you. And then you can come back at it from a central point of view. When I was put on blood thinners, I went to see my GP and said, I'm on blood thinners, not sure what's going on. I guess you're going to tell me I need to stop exercising, stop mountain biking, which is what I was doing lots of the time, because I might fall over and cut myself, and that's bad. And he said, no, I want you to get on your mountain bike and go cycling. And if you fall over and you cut yourself, have something to stick on the wound. Don't stop mountain biking just because you might fall off and bleed. You need to live and enjoy life in spite of the medication you're on. So with that as a very physical example, how can we understand that from a central point of view of trying to do stuff perhaps we're risk adverse to because we're not confident in our senses, but we kind of need to live also?
Yeah. The crux of the therapy that I do and the type of equipment that I use means that there are things that are different for people to explore so that they can't rely on their normal ways of doing things. You on a bike, you pedal around and round, and that's how it works. You start going on different ground, all of a sudden you have to move slightly differently. Yes, your wheels are slightly going round, but you're more conscious of your balance to accommodate for changes in the gravel. So if it's gravel, just in case there's something that might put you off. That uncertainty, that ununiform sense of ground is the same way that my equipment works. I have equipment that challenges balance, that challenges the body in a way that causes the brain to what we call make adaptive responses, which is that we want the brain to be connecting with the body to stop itself from falling or to actually initiate something that somebody might think is pleasurable. All of that comes with an element of risk, because it's like you have to put yourself out of your normal center of balance. You have to put yourself out of your normal psychological sense of, I know what I'm doing, but it has to be that motivational push to want to have to strive to want to do something a little bit different that you've never done before. That's what's so powerful about changing the brain when those occasions happen. So it could be a risk mentally, to do something that you've never done before and think about how you might take a step towards doing something. But it will always, from my perspective, it will always connect with a physical movement, because the integration of how we think and how we move, the integration of our mind, soul, body, spirit is so key to being healthy. Spiritually healthy, physically healthy, sensory healthy, emotionally healthy, all of those go together to a really healthy humanity and a human being and a living experience. So yeah, it's that balance of pushing it to outside of what is norm, which causes that element of risk, which could be a physical risk, but it could be a risk in other areas. But it is managed and it is careful, but it is still, we have to allow people to experience how to do things differently. Otherwise, we will always do the same, think the same. That's not living.
I was thinking about how we get on with the living part. If I was on a drug, perhaps that would mess with my equilibrium, my ability to stand upright and where's down, where's up. If I was on something that was messing with that, maybe the GP would have said, well, perhaps mountain biking isn't the best option for you. Why don't you try a treadmill or an exercise bike that isn't moving, so you've got some fixed points. And I guess that's where we do need experts in their fields, which is what you do, which is what the GP was, who said, look, don't not cycle just because you could have a problem, because you could not have a problem also. Because he said, you're not going to be aiming for the ground, are you? No. You're not going to be trying to hurt yourself. No. Right. In that case, just get on with the mountain bike. And we were on the Salisbury Plains, which was brilliant. He says, you're getting fresh air, you're getting sun, you're getting exercise. It's good on so many levels. The possibility of cutting yourself, which on blood thinners is a risk. He said, that's not worth it. He said, just get out on your bike, keeping it. You're loving it. It's enjoyable. It's good for so many things. The one possible risk that could happen also might not happen. And therefore, why would you cut it out? And I guess with senses, we all have these comfort zones where we're happy, but we need to push who we are physically, mentally, in order to understand what we can achieve.
Yeah. And what, as a therapist, I kind of draw out that motivation rather than like pushing from behind. Push is an interesting word. That's an interesting concept as to how we work it and what it means. And it's great in certain circumstances. Yeah, so it's just that gentle, motivation to think that, drawing them out to do something that they've never done before, to balance in a way that they've never balanced before, to pull on something, to make something move, to see a cause and effect of pushing something, of going down a ramp on their front when maybe like on a scooter board, which is like a skateboard, but the wheels go in all different directions. So you can kind of like be on your front. It's like surfing on wheels indoors.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so if you're paddling through the surf, you actually paddle on the ground instead. You've got wheels that will go in all directions and you can kind of like paddle around the room. That is a lovely thing. All of a sudden, I ask them or I show them there's a ramp there that they can actually put their scooter board on and they can actually go down it on their front, making sure that, yes, I don't have a glass wall at the end of it, that I have padding there, that I have other things that they will be safe when they land, should they go down more fast than they expected to, so they can't control it. But just see, is that motivating? Do they want to try that? They've had a feel of how fast it is to go on this scooter board. Some won't like the speed, in which case we just stay on the floor and we'll just see if we can slowly bring the risk of bringing them a little bit faster. Sometimes I might pull them and just check, are they happy with that? And they can be whizzed around the room while they're on the scooter board and I'm the one that's doing the pulling. But they're happy with that. And then it's like, oh, should we try it on a ramp? So it's doing those little gradings so that we increase the risk bit by bit according to what we feel they are comfortable with. Because if they're too scared, say if they are on that roller coaster, that is just going to flood their system and they are going to be completely overwhelmed and might be sick for the next 2 days. So that's not, as a therapist, where we go. If people choose to do that themselves, on you go. That's on your head be it. But as a therapist, we need to take things just step by step so that it's a managed risk of how much we push or we pull or we encourage that motivation and draw out how far they're willing to go and how quickly they're willing to go.
And I guess the idea of pushing ourselves and how fast can we go, we can increase that. But if we don't try, we don't know. I was very confident that any sort of adventure place would be bad for me because I had one bad experience on this particular ride and I've never ever wanted to go on one since. When I was working with in an additional needs school, I had responsibility on one of these places, and I had 2 kids who I was responsible for. One of them was in a wheelchair, wanted to go on this pirate ship, which is the one that just goes up and down and up again. It's very simple. It moves on one little motion. I really, really want to go on this, Mr. Berry. Can we go on? Yes, I suppose, because it was supposed to be their day of fun. And I went on and I did not do well, but I got through it because he was loving it, because he was strapped into his wheelchair in the thing. And the staff were great. They just, they had ways of securing the wheelchair because that's good. And he had an absolute fantastic time. I didn't, but he did. And somehow it was worth it. Me feeling sick for a few days afterwards, which I did. Actually, it was worth it because I saw the joy in his face of just that I think it was the moment at which you become weightless.
Yeah.
And I guess is it different because he's in a wheelchair? I don't know, but he absolutely, the elation was more than everybody else on there.
And that is gorgeous. That's linear vestibular. It's a beautiful thing for lots of people, not everybody. But yeah, it's and especially when you are in a wheelchair, you don't have the same vestibular experiences. And I think it's really good that we are slowly moving as a society to incorporate wheelchairs into vestibular activities. We're starting to get, I don't even know if we have one on the island here, but we're starting to get play parks that you can put a wheelchair on, so some will get rotation. If you've got an electric wheelchair, you can take yourself round and round. That's okay. But there's a little bit of up and down, I suppose, in certain wheelchairs. But that's the higher end of what you can afford. But most won't have a lot of vestibular input, and it's so important for our development in loads of different areas. So just because somebody's confined, it is confined in that term. Physically, they are confined with what their vestibular experiences can be, because we haven't yet developed the full types of movements that folks in wheelchairs should be able to get in order to help continue to use their vestibular system well.
I know we spoke in the past about a difference between younger and older people. I mean, I'm guessing somewhere in the teens it changes, where you might be on a roundabout and you're spinning around, and as a child it's great, and as a 25-year-old now you're throwing up because your body can't cope. So we know that there are going to be changes, but is there a difference, you think, between men and women, or boys and girls, when it comes to challenging our, I suppose, safety, pushing those risk zones? Is because, okay, the analogy in my head is lads. The stereotype is lads love to do this stuff that's dangerous. They get on a bike, they go down a hill, and they don't think about the wall at the bottom. They just want to go down the hill. Is there a difference in how we're made, that boys and girls, or men and women, do we view this differently?
That's fascinating, because I know that I am not what would be classed as a typical, because I was the one that was encouraging the boys to do things, my own children, and it was just like, so I never said careful. And yet I knew that other family members who are female would say, "Oh, careful." I'm like, why are you saying no, careful? I don't get it. And that wasn't, I mean, I was a young therapist at that point, so it wasn't as if I was well. It just was who I was. And I've always been, more of a risk taker, more of an optimist, more of a faith, just all of those things. It's interesting how that all comes together as well. But yeah, for boys, we've got a natural, I think there is a natural bent in I was going to say the male species, I don't know how to describe it, just in men and boys generally, but also because their systems need a lot more, I think, of vestibular proprioceptive input, because the actual mass of masculinity, ooh, that's an interesting one, the mass of masculinity is higher. So there is more input that is needed to develop a male body. The intensity of everything is higher. Whereas I think girls, there's less of us. There does seem to be something that there is on a typical basis that we don't need quite as much input, and therefore we would also think it's easier for us to think ahead, because we're already genuinely a little bit more integrated than boys growing up. So we would think, oh, maybe that's not a good idea. You need to make sure that there's something at the end of that, down the bottom of the hill, because actually you're going to hurt yourself. And we all of that's there. But the boys are still in that, oh, this feels really good. This is great sensory input, really physical, lots of vestibular input going really fast, or spinning, or upside down, or, that thrill seeking is massively sensory. And it just helps boys feel good in who they are. Then you've got the whole bravado, and then you've got all the other emotional, social things that go on with masculinity. But I think there is a difference. There is a difference sensory wise, and I think a lot of it is that the girls don't generally need as much input as the boys do, because the mass of boys is different. So
that was interesting. That was not the answer I thought you'd give at all. That was really fascinating. I just see this thing of lads like charging down a hill. I remember doing it in the thrill. Now, I tend to be probably more risk averse. And when I got my lads on mountain bikes jumping off a little tiny wall, Joe was quite shocked that I was even doing that. But it's sort of the thing I think, well, what if they fall, we break the bike, they hurt themselves? That would be where my brain goes, stay-at-home dad for so many years. So she was quite surprised that I had this one day when I was like, great, let's get a mountain bike and jump off a little wall. Okay, we increased the danger levels as we went, but it was good fun. And actually, boys loved it.
Mm.
And Joe didn't fancy trying it.
Well, that's the thing. It's just like, yeah, I wouldn't have done half the things and I still wouldn't. I'm happy for others to do it. It's just like, no, I'm not going to do that. That does not bring me pleasure. But yeah,
I'll be there cheering you on, but you go for it.
absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I love how we never know what we're going to talk about, really. There's no scripting here. I've got some ideas and stuff. We don't even touch those. And today we've covered the idea of taking risk. Is there a difference between genders? Yes, there seems to be some typical differences. And we've looked at things like, how do we not be risk averse? How do we actually look at being risk averse? What can we do to our lives to make lives more interesting and to challenge ourselves, which is a good thing, because we are made and designed to do amazing things, are we not?
We are. Oh, go for it. Let's live life. We need to come alive. If you are not feeling alive, if you are not living life to the full, then there's something amiss. And start with the senses. Go for an sensory experience that you've never had before within certain boundaries. That will just make you feel alive and make you feel good.
It is good. Right. If you want more information on Anne Laure Jackson, how you can connect with her and have help from her if you're struggling with your senses or maybe your loved one is, you can find out more at our website. It links to her for you, which is pure247radio.org, pure247radio.org/ALJ for Anne Laure Jackson.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne. We'll see you again next time.
Bye.
Pure 24/7 Radio is listener supported, which means we are free, online and always pure because of the generous support of our listeners. If you would like to contribute financially, please visit pure247radio.org. If you'd like to find out how we use your money, please visit the Our Cost section. Any donation of any size will help keep us on air and broadcasting for free. Thank you.